In 2016, I took a 3-month sabbatical to walk the Camino de Santiago in Spain, and I walked over 600 miles. I was super excited to just take a break from work and completely disconnect. The best parts of the sabbatical was that it helped to reset my brain.
I think something different does kick in, different than a normal vacation, when you get into that sort of like sixth week, eighth week, kind of the 2 to 3 months. And that's part of why we say it's minimum 2 months. Our every 5-year sabbatical benefit was actually inspired by a nonprofit board I was on called grist.org. It circulated this white paper that said, organizations can become too dependent on one person, particularly the executive director. And so it's best practice as a board to encourage that person to take a sabbatical of at least a few months, because then, the organization can learn to operate without them as well. And then when they come back, it'll be even stronger and they'll be able to contribute more. So I was like, well, if that makes sense for an executive director and a board, why doesn't it make sense for every single person?
By the time I started my sabbatical, I had been with Automattic for 6 years. And for 3 of those years, I was the only HR person. We were stretched super thin. I was burnt out. I was starting to wonder if I still enjoyed doing this type of work. I was worried about being disconnected for 3 months and what if something happened, and trying to just really over prepare before I went out to make sure that my team was successful when I was out. It was the best thing I could have ever done. And because I completely disconnected, came back, was rejuvenated, was excited about my work again, was excited about my team, about the projects we were taking on. Overall, it was a super positive experience.
The benefit, as we structured it, is 2 to 3 months of minimum 2, maximum 3, fully paid time off every 5 years. And then the clock resets when you're done. So that encourages people to take it. The cost, we do have to account for it. So I believe it's the equivalent of, if you did the math, I guess 90 divided by 5 number of potential additional vacation days. But I think the benefits to the organization is actually far beyond that.
So I'll be taking my second sabbatical from the end of March until the end of June. And since my last sabbatical, I have become my mother's caretaker who has Alzheimer's. And so this will be a nice break for me because, even though I won't be traveling this time, she does have a caretaker for part of the day. And so I can get out and go hiking and devote myself to exercising again and being out in the garden, and also just spending more time with her.
I think it makes the company a lot more resilient in that if someone is a bottleneck or a single point of failure, they're gone for a week, you just wait. If they're gone for 2 weeks, maybe you put it off a little bit. But when they're gone for a month or two, you need to build the ways for that role or anything like that to happen while the person's out.
For my role, we actually see this as an important part of the company culture to ready others to step into, expanded roles. A lot of our identity is wrapped up in our work and in our jobs. And for the most part, a lot of people aren't great at setting boundaries, including myself. And so the sabbatical was almost a way to have boundaries forced upon me that I could then keep once I came back to the job to just be better at my job because I was setting boundaries and I wasn't burned out and overworked.
Your company was dealing with people being out for months at a time anyway, because there's various forms of leave, like parental leave, bereavement, et cetera, that might cause people to be out. This makes it more deliberate though. So you're planning for it and, people can do with it whatever they like. Most of these other forms of leave, they have some very big commitment, which is why they're leaving, where this is really just for them.
Definitely, if someone is nearing their 5-year mark, most people are going to stay to have 3 months paid where they can do whatever they want, whether that's to look for another job, to just decompress. And even people who have left on sabbatical and were feeling very burnt out, that break just allows them the nourishment to actually come back and be excited about working at Automattic.
One of the biggest costs, sometimes hidden, sometimes not, to companies right now is churn. It's good people leaving. and their knowledge going out the door. And you have to pay to hire new people and to train them up, and for the time it takes them to get to the effectiveness of the people who left. So anything you can do to improve retention, I think is really, really strong. Last year, a year when many companies were having trouble hiring, we hired 700 people and we went to over 1,800 as a company.
Our voluntary turnover rates are actually quite low. I believe last year it was like 7.5%, which is low both for tech and for this period in the world where a lot of people are just piecing out of work. It is creating a more balanced relationship between employees and employers, and it's kind of forcing employers' hands to be more creative.
A benefit like a sabbatical, being every 5 years, gets both the employer and the employee thinking long-term, which I think is really powerful. And so I do encourage companies to brainstorm, but what are things that can reward their longest tenured employees?
Invest in you. Ready, set, grow. CNBC and Acorns.